Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Absolute Beginner tutorial for Git and GitHub. Now, in this lesson, we will be learning about what is a commit. How does a commit relate to a branch? And how does a branch relate to a repository? Also, we will be learning about what is the workflow of Git and what all stages your changes actually go through before they finally make into your remote repository on the GitHub. So without any further ado, let's get started. Now, let's go ahead and understand what a commit is. Well, a commit is just a snapshot of your changes saved in your local repository. Each commit is unique, identified by its commit ID. Well, so imagine that you are working on a piece of software and it's a huge feature that you are working on, and you are creating or adding functionality to that feature step by step. Now, at each step where you think that you have done a significant amount of work and the things are working, you would be creating something called as a git commit. Now, commit is just a snapshot. It's going to take all the code that's there in your current repository on your current branch, and it's going to take a snapshot of it so that you can come back to it later if something goes wrong down the line while you're working on adding more functionality to your features, to your current feature, and something doesn't go well and you want to go back to the stable version of the code within this feature that was working, and you can start again from that point onwards. It's sort of like a checkpoint that you can go back to. Once things go wrong, you are always free to go to this checkpoint. So commits are nothing but snapshots, or you can call them as checkpoints in your series of steps that you are doing in your repository to create some feature into or solving some bug. And each commit comes with a commit hash which uniquely identifies that commit, so that it does not get messed up into the version history that Git maintains, because many developers are going to work on the same piece of code, and at some point of time when we are done with the feature, when we say we made a commit F1 CF1, we made a commit CF2, and we made a commit CF3, and all these are different stages which are stable stages in our feature branch that we have created. These are just snapshots or checkpoints at which we found ourselves to be having a stable feature with some significant functionality added. It's mostly suggested that you create commits very often so that if something goes wrong, you can go back to these, and don't make too many changes in just one commit, because it would, isolate different requirements into different commits. But that is something which we are going to experience later for a later lesson. Let's keep that for a later lesson. So you created CF1, you created CF2, CF3, and now you are done with the feature. What you really want is your feature to go in production. So to do that, you would have to get this feature added into your main branch in the Git so that it can be deployed to production. As I just mentioned previously, main branch is usually, most likely in every organization, is the production ready branch, which has all the code, all the features that are stable, well tested, bug free. Nothing is bug free, honestly, but potentially bug free, and that is something you want to go to production servers. So what you need to create is something called as a merge request or a pull request in terms of GitHub. But eventually what you want is that you want this code to be merged into your main branch. And at the same time, some other developer might also be doing the same things, and they also might want to get their code deployed to production server. Now, each of the commits that they have made and you have made has to be uniquely identified. And for that to happen, we have this commit ID, which is just a commit hash that Git offers us to uniquely identify that who contributed what code into the project, or who to blame when something gets very awfully disgusting on the production server and something gets broken. So just kidding. So let's go ahead and configure our Git to be able to generate these commit IDs. Now Git can still make commits without us adding these configurations, but they are required, and they are something that you would want to have in your production level code, so that your name and your email addresses are properly mentioned in each of your commit to uniquely identify you. It is you who made these changes. So what we are going to say within this directory, we're going to say git config -- global user.name, and in the quotation marks we are mentioning our name. For my case, it does need Singh. In your case, just add your name or whatever name that you want to appear on Git whenever you add a commit into your repository. Hit enter. And by the way, and -- global means that you're adding these configurations in the global context of Git, so that every new directory that or every new repository that you will create into your system and every commit that you make on that particular repository, Git is going to take the global username if it is not set specifically for that repository. Now we can set different names for different repositories as well. You just have to omit this global flag and you just have to enter whatever the rest of the command was, like git config user.name Hasneet Singh. So it's going to set this particular name for that particular repository. And for the rest of the repositories, the name is going to be coming from global configuration if it is not set specifically on that directory by omitting the global flag. So, all right. The next command that we're going to say is git config user.email. And in the quotation marks, just add your email. I'm not going to add mine since it's already set up. And again, you can have this global flag so that it can be set globally and you would not have to repeat this. Most of the time that you wouldn't find the need to repeat these commands is if you set the -- global flag. So because it will be you who's working most of the time, unless you want your name to be different or email ID to be different for different repositories, you can just go ahead and set -- global and feel free. All right, now once we are done with that, I just want to explain one more thing around how the Git system actually works. Well, time for another diagram. All right. So this is something which, let me just zoom in a little bit more. Yeah. So this is the flow that we are going to follow, or what I actually should say, the Git system actually follows this particular structure. I'd like to explain a few of the names, the technical names that are present in here. Well, there is something called as a remote repository, and it is nothing but your GitHub repository, which is this one, Learning Git. And the same directory is present on our system as well, which we refer to as a local repository, which is right here. Now, there are two more things, working area and the staging area. Working area is the place where you are actually typing in your code and Git is just tracking those changes one by one. All the files that you made modifications to, all the files that you create or delete, all these modifications are tracked by Git in this working area. And when we are actually going to add these changes when we plan to add some of these changes, might not be all, but some of these changes or all of these changes, and we want them to be pushed into our remote repository, we have to add those changes that we plan to push into the staging area. Now, how do we add this? We have a few commands written over here, but do not stress over these right now because we'll be going ahead and creating a new file in just a moment, and we'll be pushing that file and we'll be adding it to the staging area. We're going to make a commit and put it into our local repository, and we're going to push that file into our remote repository in just a moment. But this is the diagram which I wanted to explain you a little, that what we are actually going to do. So quick summary: whenever we are going to make some change or create any file, it will be done in the working area. When we plan on pushing that file into the remote repository, which is this GitHub account, in this within this GitHub account, specifically in the learning Git repository, when we want to push something over there, we need to add that thing into the staging area. And everything that is there in a staging area gets committed once you write the git commit command, which we are going to do just in a moment. And that all those changes are packed together into one single commit, and those are added into your local repository. And from that point onwards, everything that you try to push into your remote repository, all the changes that have been committed from the staging area into the local repository and are not present on your remote repository will be pushed and synchronized into the remote repository, and you'll be seeing your files over on your GitHub account. A lot of words, I know. Let's go ahead and actually dive into the code and create our first file, which will be index.js file. Or rather, let's not go ahead and do something complex in the JS file. We are just going to create a README file, which is, as I mentioned in the previous video, is just a description on your repository or the commands that are required to run your project. So, all right, now let's go ahead and type code space dot to open VS Code. Well, the VS Code has been opened. Let's just maximize this. And if you do not have this command code space dot available when you type code space dot on your terminal or on your git bash, just press Ctrl Shift P and say install code command. So just click on this first shell command, install code command in path, and you are good to go. Just reload your terminal, and then within your directory, just press code space dot, and your Visual Studio Code should open for you. Now, within this learning Git directory, let's go ahead and create a new file, which will be the readme.md file. Now, this is a special extension, which is the .md, which stands for Markdown. And do not worry about this much, because I'll be explaining a lot about this in later lessons. For the time being, let's just say that this is a Git repository that is created to learn Git. Control S for saving. And now let's go ahead and see what is there in the staging or in the working area. Now, all these changes that are there are actually being tracked by Git and are being saved into the working area. How do we see this? We can also open the inbuilt terminal that Visual Studio Code provides us with by pressing Command J as a shortcut, or Control J if you are on a Windows machine. Now, in this, type the command git space status and hit enter. What git status command does, it tells you the brief summary of what is being tracked and what has changed in this file structure. So it's saying that you are currently on branch main, no commits yet, untracked files, readme.md. And you are seeing this untracked file because this is a new file that we create. Every new file is added as an untracked file, so you would have to add the file by typing a git add command, which we'll just do now. Now, the fact that this particular readme file path is actually being shown in a red color, it specifies or signifies that this is currently part of the working area. All the files that are being tracked and are changed or modified, created or deleted, that are being shown in a red color, you can certainly say that these are the files which are tracked by Git but are currently part of the working area. When you type another command of Git, which is git add command, which we will do just now, it's going to take all those changes and put them in the staging area, prepared to be committed into your local repository. And all the files which are present in the staging area are going to be shown in green color. So let's go ahead and add this file into the staging area, because we want to commit this file and push it on to our GitHub account. So let's go ahead and say git add and copy this file path and type in here. Since this is the only file which we are going to add into our staging area. So we can also replace this by dot. And dot means all the files that are currently in the working area, add all the files into the staging area. It could be files or directories, and within those directories, multiple files will be there, and all these things will be added. But since we only have one file, we can quickly copy this and paste this over here, and we say git add, which is the command add, to add it to the staging area, and we hit enter. Now, if we again type git status, now you see that these is showing as a green color, which means it is in which means it is in the staging area already. And it also says that changes to be committed. So Git is aware that you have added something into the staging area and it is ready to be committed to be added into your local repository and later pushed to your remote repository. Now, if we for a moment go to our remote repository, we refresh the page, we see all this stuff which is around how to clone this repository, how to commit the changes onto your remote repository kind of stuff, because currently this repository is completely empty. Now, when we will be adding more things to this remote repository, this will not look the same. This will completely follow the directory structure that we have on our local machine, which is, if you type ls-al, it's going to have a .git file. It's going to have a readme.md file. So let's clear this terminal. I'm pressing Command K to clear this. It might be some shortcut on Windows. I'm not sure about that, but you can do a quick Google search and find that out. So now we say git status again. I mean, it's showing in the green color. The next command that we are going to learn is commit. So now we are going to say git commit. And when we say git commit and hit enter, it's going to show us with this fancy stuff. And now what it's expecting us is to write a commit message. Type the letter I to insert. Then you can see the insert over here. Now you'll be able to write the message. Let's say add readme.md file. All right. So press escape, and then the insert will go away from here. Type :WQ to actually write and quit from this terminal. I mean, not this terminal, but this nano terminal or whatever it is, and this write mode, and go back to the original terminal that we were working with. So, all right, it says that git config username and git config global user email. Yeah, I mean, it's already is configured, so don't worry about it much, because I just did not do this for this particular project. Maybe that's why it's prompting this to me. So, I mean, sorry for confusion, but now we have added this into our local repository. As we quickly go ahead and see in this diagram, we were here previously when it was showing in red. We typed the command git add and then the file name, file path actually, not the file name, and it got added into the staging area. From the staging area, we made a git commit command with a commit message. And by the way, you can also combine that commit message. You can also have the shortcut to that commit message by typing git commit -m, which stands for the message pod, and within quotations you can say add readme.md. I mean, this was a shortcut way, but I just wanted you to be able to see the actual way, which gives you more flexibility if you want to add more than one lines. This wouldn't do that, but I mean, whichever you prefer, the choice is yours. So once we type git commit, it gets added into our local repository. And now we are going to say git push to push all those changes which are present in our local repository, and the changes that are not actually synchronized over into our remote repository, those are the ones which are going to be added via the git push command and be published onto our GitHub repository for the Learning Git project. All right, so we are going to say git push origin and then main. Well, too many different words. I mean, we did not study this. So let's pause a little bit to understand what this command would actually do. So if we say git branch, and before that, if we say git status, it says you are currently on branch main. Well, it's saying this, but how do we prove it that we are currently on the branch that it's actually telling us that we are on? So what you can do is you can use another git command called as git branch. And if you hit enter, you are going to see all the branches. In this case, we just have one, which is the main branch. And those all branches will be listed over here. And an asterisk will be shown in front of the branch that you're currently working on. So in this case, we are on the main branch. It's currently, it has this asterisk, which means that we are currently on this branch. So that justifies that git state is also saying that we are currently on branch main. So it's telling the truth, not lying to us. And I know it could be a little daunting that so many commands in so less time, but believe me, as we move ahead, we are going to repeat these commands so many times that you are going to learn this by heart. So, and the next thing that we added into this git push command was this origin thing. So what is this origin thing? Well, it's just an alias for the repository path that we have. And we will be learning how to create this alias in the next video. But in this, I'll just show you this alias where it is located in the git. So if you say another command, you don't have to remember this just yet. We'll discuss this in the next video. You say git remote -v, it will, oh, I'm sorry, I say git remove. I should be saying git remote -v. And if I hit enter, you would see origin mentioned as the alias name for this particular directory path. And again, this path is not, I mean, it is not exactly this path, but this path actually, which is the one that we used for cloning our repository onto our local system, but it basically signifies this path only. So it has two versions to it, fetch and push. And both of these versions have the same alias called as origin. By default, they will have the same name. I mean, origin for fetch, origin for push. When you are fetching or cloning from the, when you are fetching new changes from the Git repository or pulling changes from the Git repository, which we will be discussing in the next lesson, you say again this origin. And when we are pushing, which we are doing right now, you again say origin for both of these. I mean, it's just an alias for the directory path on the remote location, which is the GitHub account. So we are going to say git push all the changes that are present in the staging area, which are the committed changes. I mean, not the staging area, but instead in the local repository, because we added all these changes to the staging area with the git add command, and we added all these added changes which are in the staging area into the local repository, which I just showed over here with the git commit command. And now all the changes that are present in the local repository, which are not synchronized over to the remote repository, are going to be pushed in using this git push command. So let's go ahead and say git push origin, which is the path where we want to push this. And this path might have more than one branches, which we are going to create in later lessons. But the branch that we are currently working with and are on is the main branch, and that's where we want to push this code into. Just hit enter and wait for the magical moment. Well, it says, okay, enumerating objects, counting something like, okay, so it says writing objects 100% and says done. That means we should be seeing all these changes, which is this addition of readme.md file onto our GitHub repository. So time for the big moment. Just refresh this page and, well, I mean, I'm sorry, I was on the network tab. Let's go to the code and see this. We have this file on our GitHub account within the learning Git repository. And we also have the commit message over here, which says add readme.md file, which clearly signifies that what we actually did in this commit, we actually added the readme.md file. And that readme actually shows just down below over here. Says this is a Git repository that is created to learn Git. So with this being said, we are done with these lessons, and I know we have covered a lot of the commands and it could feel daunting, but we will be repeating these commands over and over again. I can't stress this more, but you trust me that you will be learning all these by heart in no time as we go ahead in the more future lessons, because we'll be doing this over and over every single time whenever we are adding few significant changes, which we are going to do definitely. So with that being said, let's catch up in the next video.